and burden on our economy, we're not going to be able to do those things.
Do you believe that that our global environment and global warming is a product of man-made carbon dioxide release and burning fossil fuels?
I'm not sure. I know the air is dirty. I live in Chicago.
Okay.
I can see the air a lot of times. I don't want to see the air.
What's
I'd like to have
your
fewer
5,000-foot view of how we should address this issue?
Well, the world is getting warmer. I won't dispute that. I live in Chicago. I used to deliver newspapers when I was a kid in blizzard and cold weather, and it's not as cold anymore. But the Earth has gone through cycles all throughout its history. We can prove this. Science, ice cores and things. Greenland is called Greenland because it used to be green. It wasn't buried under ice. So the world has gone through all kinds of cycles, and we've survived. Is CO2 in the air a bad thing? Quite possibly, and ozone is a horrible thing. I certainly don't want to see it, and I want to do everything I can to clean the air. But I also want to do everything I can to give people opportunity and to give people electricity. So let's do some smart things. Let's go to nuclear power. Let's shift away from burning fossil fuels. Let's go to wind and solar. Let's get an electric car. Let's diversify ourselves away from giving money to the Arab sheiks that, as you mentioned, are holding our feet to the fire. Those are good things.
Key to making nuclear power work, which in terms of electrical production, since 50% of our total electrical production is based on the burning of coal, which is the highest CO2
Actually, it's more like
emitting.
80%. But
I think it's 50
pretty
right
high.
now. It's coal at
high.
50, nuclear right at 20, gas at like 18, something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty high in coal.
It's very high. But if we replace just the coal piece with nuclear power, we'd come a huge step forward in this issue. But we can't do that.
I don't think that's going to happen.
But we can't do that.
Cost is a factor there, too.
Well, critical to moving forward with nuclear power is the establishment of a federally controlled repository for the nuclear waste, like Yucca Mountain.
Yes.
What would John Cox do to forward that, to break that logjam?
I think we have to open up Yucca Mountain. We've spent $6 billion or something like that preparing for that repository, and nothing is going to be environmentally totally
Well, I believe
secure.
the issue right now is that the Midwestern states are saying, look, we don't want the waste that's produced.
We don't want to transport it.
Yeah. So there's the issues. There's
issue.
the risk of transportation. There's there's one state storing another state's material. How would you creatively find a balance in there and solve that? That is the key to going forward. It seems like in this.
I think we need to bring private sector research into it. To tell you the truth, the French, have figured out a way to redevelop. I'm at a loss for the exact word, but basically to reuse plutonium down to a thimble size on a relative basis. Reprocess, that's the word I'm looking for. They have figured out a way, because they have the same problem. I mean, France generates 90%. It's hard to believe we're going to learn something from the French, isn't it? But with all the abuse of the French, there's a lot to learn.
So they reprocess locally and then transport a less radioactive substance for long-term storage.
And a much smaller substance that's very much tougher to blow up or steal in that sense. So I think if we unleashed private research into this arena, I think we'd do much better. I think people motivated by the profit motive will figure out a way to reprocess plutonium down to such a small degree that it's less dangerous, easier to transport, and we solve the problem.
You've never, I believe you never held elected office.
I think that's a good thing.
Okay, I think that might be a good thing too, but I'm wondering about, this is a very political issue.
No question.
How do you think that you can get the Western states to buy into this? And are they going to have to profit from it? What's in it for them? How are they going to agree to this?
Well, it's still a federal country.
Or is that going to be federally mandated?
Yucca Mountain is a federal project, and of course we have to listen to the people that are there locally, and they have their amount of political power. But unfortunately, there are national issues and there are federal requirements that are undergone, and we all have to recognize that we're all part of the United States of America. We all have to pull together. I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't like destroyers and bombs built in their backyard. I mean, there's a lot of people out in Nebraska and places that didn't want Nike missiles in their backyard back during the Cold War. unfortunately, federal concerns and security concerns sometimes take precedence, and I think this is one where that's going to be necessary, possibly.
On healthcare, we're seeing a drop in entrepreneurialism in the United States because if you take the risk of taking your dream, your idea, and creating a company around it, chances are you're not going to get health care. Or the cost of that health care is going to drive you broke.
Right.
Or if you want to hire a minimum wage person to answer, to sit behind the desk and answer telephones, you're going to have to pay her $12,000 or $14,000 a year just for the health insurance to have that person. But yet, if you talk,
why is that, Joe?
Well, I want to ask you about that. But I will say that I've spoken with a number of doctors in private practice who say that 70 cents of every dollar that comes in went to chase that dollar because of a multi-payer system.
Government, insurance companies.
So I want to know, because it seems like do you advocate a single payer system?
No.
Do you advocate a multi-payer system? I mean, because you don't advocate single payer, those doctors still have that problem.
The first cell phone I bought, Joe, cost me $4,000. $4,000 for the first cell phone I bought. Today I can buy the same cell phone for $20 probably, or $50, some ridiculously low number.
Okay.
Why was that? Because there was a lot of demand that came about, people wanting to use cell phones, and there was a big supply.
Right.
No matter what we do, and this is the essence of why I'm running for president, because we have a lot of politicians who always talk about their solution, and their solution is usually more government. And you're seeing that now. Hillary, Obama, and Edwards are all falling all over themselves the promise that government's going to take care of their health care forever. And you know what? It's a false promise, because government is a blunt instrument. Government doesn't have the profit motive. Government doesn't have the incentive for efficiency and quality that the private sector does. But no matter what you tell me,
I think your point is right, but I believe the issue here is that with the doctors is that if you have 5 different insurance companies, you have 5 different sets of forms, 5 different negotiations, 5 different sets of reimbursement levels, and that means 5 different people filling out forms on staff full time, raising the cost of health care.
But if there's pure competition in the insurance business, those insurance companies are going to fall all over themselves to figure out a way to make the system more efficient.
Is there not competition now?
No, there's not enough competition now. We've let insurance companies get too big. We've let prescription drug companies get too big. We've injected the government too much into the medical equation, and we've taken away the consumer, Joe. That's what we've done. We've insulated the consumer. Everybody is happy to take the burden away from the consumer because that's their key to political success. But the trouble is, the consumer is still involved in the decision of whether to buy a cell phone and which cell phone to buy. The consumer is still involved in which car to buy. And what does that do? That drives those companies to do their job better, to do their job more efficiently, to bring down the cost and to bring up the quality. Competition does that. Supply and demand, Joe. If we want healthcare costs to be lower, we've got to increase the supply. We're always going to have a lot of demand for healthcare. So the answer to bringing down the cost and improving the efficiency is to increase competition, increase the supply, remove a lot of the mandates, remove a lot of the barriers to insurance companies getting into the business.
Okay, but here's the point I don't understand, is that if the doctors, if the private practices are telling you that the problem, that a key component of the cost of this is the fact that each one of these suppliers, and there's a lot, to their view, there is a lot of suppliers out there, they each have their own forms, their own reimbursement policies, their own negotiations, blah, 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 blah. It takes a specialist to understand each particular insurance company, and then these insurance companies still play their games. It seems like, in this case, the free market approach, increasing the supply, exacerbates the problem.
No, it hasn't, because there hasn't been enough supply. Insurance companies are still barred from competing across state lines. We had to pass a law recently that would allow even small associations to write health insurance. Today, the governments of all the states put on such huge mandates that there's a cookie-cutter insurance plan that somebody can sell, and that's it. They can't devise different kinds of things. That's like saying there's only one car you can sell. You can't have a Lexus or a Cadillac, and you can't have a Yugo or a Chevy. You got to have one kind of car. Well, what kind of supply would we have if the government mandated just one kind of car? What kind of real competition? Maybe when you went in to buy a car, if the government mandated one kind of car to be able to buy, maybe you'd have to fill out 18 million forms and you'd have all kinds of barriers to buying a car. But that's not what you have today. Because of competition, you can go in and you can go down a list of car dealerships and they make it easy for you. They can approve your credit right there in most cases. They fill out the forms. You fill out the forms, you walk out with your car. If we had true competition in the insurance business, you wouldn't have companies that would force doctors to jump through hoops and to fill out 1 million forms. You'd have the consumer in charge, because the consumer would say, hey, insurance company, if you're going to screw around and make my doctor fill out all these forms and add cost into this process, I'm going to go down to the street to XYZ insurance company, and they're not going to do that. I have real market power.
So you're saying increase the number of suppliers
Absolutely.
by 10 or 100. So wouldn't you therefore incur a policing and regulation burden?
Well, that burden already is there. I mean, you've got state insurance departments all across the country that. I actually was an insurance specialist when I was a CPA, and so there's state insurance departments already in existence that make sure that these companies are financially viable and that they're going to fulfill their promises. I think that mechanism is already in place. And you know what? With technology, one of the great things about technology, Joe, is it doesn't matter that there's 2 or 3 or 10, because technology allows you to replicate operations so that you can be able to monitor that many.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of focus today on maintaining the maintaining the status of marriage as a ritual in a relationship between a man and a woman.
I'm a big believer in that.
But there is this concept of a civil union,
right,
that is basically a business relationship between any two people that,
sure,
that basically gives the partner the power of attorney to exercise in the event of, say, the death or the diminution of the other partner.
Sure.
It seems like that is an essential component, regardless of where you fall down on the efficacy of gay marriage or gay relationships. How can your position accommodate the necessity to be able to in effect have that type of relationship?
I'm absolutely for people who have those relationships to have legal rights to inherit, to visit in hospitals and do things like that. I don't think we have to call it a civil union. See, what this is all about, Joe, is it ultimately falls down to money. I mean, that's what this is all about. Just about every State of the Union, as I understand it, allows people to designate a healthcare power, an agent for a healthcare power, so that that person, and they don't have to be related to you even, so if a gay person wants to designate their gay lover as someone who is power of attorney over their medical affairs, that can be done, I think, in just about every State of the Union now. So that I'm absolutely a proponent of. I'm absolutely a proponent of those kinds of legal rights.
But doesn't that have to be done explicitly at each point of presence at each hospital? That's not implicit with a relationship or a term?
No. I'm an attorney. I've drafted healthcare powers, and they apply to every hospital, and they should be applied to every hospital. And I wouldn't have a problem with a law that made a hospital honor that designation. That's not a problem. What this comes down to, though, the whole idea of gay marriage and gay civil unions and all these things about money, Joe. And I understand that. I understand gay people want to be treated the same as heterosexuals. I really do understand that. We all want more money. We all want more benefits. I mean, why not? Why not try to get them if we can? But I believe it is a proper role for the legislature of every state to be able to decide we're going to allocate benefits, our scarce resources, for the benefit of relationships that we want to foster. And because it's about children.
Okay.
We need children to survive. If we don't have children in the future, we fall behind the rest of the world, and ultimately we die out. I mean, look at Japan. Japan has had a falling birth rate, and what kinds of problems economically do they have? So it's a proper role for government to say, we're going to support the institution of marriage because that's what produces most, if not almost all, of our children. And I realize 2 gay women can have a child. I don't think that's the right thing to do, but that's certainly their right to do that.
Okay.
And that's fine. But 99% of children are born of a man and a woman. It's an incumbent upon a role for the state legislatures of this country to say, we're going to provide benefits, and the federal government too, to those families that produce children, because children are essential to the future of our society.
Okay. We just have a few more minutes. Time
Sure,
goes fast
I
here.
know they do.
Currently, with ethanol, through farm and energy subsidies, about 51 cents of every gallon of ethanol comes from subsidies. Should that, and furthermore, it's into corn, the least efficient method of creating ethanol, does really nothing for our CO2 emissions, for our carbon problems. Do you support that?
It's a little cleaner, but you're right. I don't support ethanol subsidies, and I don't support oil subsidies. And I've sat down with the Farm Bureau in Iowa, and they agree with me. What they want to see is a world that's an even playing field, where ethanol competes with oil and gasoline, basically.
Is the U.S. agro industry, such as Archer Daniels Midland, for example, are they attempting to hijack?
No, and that's a political boogeyman. You know, they're arguing for subsidies because the oil industry has already been there for a lot of years ahead of them, arguing for subsidies. And we subsidize the oil industry substantially in this country. I want this country to be in a situation where we're not subsidizing any kind of product like that, and particularly ones that use political contributions to get benefits from the government. The reason ethanol producers want subsidies is because the oil companies already have beaten them to the punch. What I want to do is elect leaders that can't be bought, who aren't looking to get contributions from either industry or any industry out there, who stand up and say, let's let the free market operate, let's encourage ethanol production, let's encourage oil production, let's do what we can to make the regulatory workings such that those two businesses can succeed in this country. Let's change the tax system so more investment flows to them. But I am absolutely foursquare against subsidizing either of those.
Has your campaign accepted contributions from any PACs or corporations?
Well, I haven't gotten to that point where they're actually throwing money at me, but you know, PACs aren't evil in and of themselves. PACs are called that because they're political action committees, which means they're committees of people who represent certain points of view. And they are allowed to make political contributions just like you are, just like anybody else out there. And they ought to be, because we ought to be able to make contributions. And that's how we petition our government for redress. That's in the Constitution. The issue is, first of all, sunlight. So there ought to be absolute sunlight. I don't believe in restricting political speech in the least. And you know, it's interesting, Barack Obama wrote a editorial in the Tribune they published this last week, and he talked about how we need to go after the bundlers, you know, the people who bundle contributions. That's the newest thing that's going on out there, where people, the pioneers and the rangers and all these other people that bundled contributions. My response to that is, I want to elect people that can't be bought. I want statesmen. I don't want career politicians like Barack Obama. He's a nice guy, but his whole life is tied up in politics. It's his career. I think he should spend some years in the private sector, learn what really goes on in the private sector in the real world, and then I think he should go and devote some time to politics. I think he's great to do that. But I think the concept that we have in this country, that we have career politicians who will run over their grandmother for a political contribution or for a spot on the media so that they can keep their political office, is what's hurting America. We need to get to the situation where we have people serving in public life who do it because of public service, because it's doing something beyond themselves, not because it's a career, not because it's a way to employ their children, not because it's a way for them to make money for themselves. And the corruption sickens me. The waste in Washington sickens me. I think it's disgusting to the average American out there, which is why they've retreated, and I think we've got to change it.
Last issue, is we just got about a minute and a half. Illegal immigration. It's on everyone's mind, certainly in the news. There's a bill coming up. What is your position on President Bush's immigration plan?
I'm against it. I'm against amnesty. I think it's the wrong thing to do, and not because I'm not compassionate, but because I am compassionate. It's not compassion to allow millions of people to stay in this country and earn a living while people in Ghana who have applied to come to this country legally are starving, waiting 8, 10, 12 years to get into the country, and we can't absorb them because we've got this 12 million who broke the law to get here. That's not compassion. It's not compassion to the 70 million who are left in Mexico suffering with that economy from that corrupt government in Mexico, because that government gets away with sending its workers up here to take money and send it back down to Mexico. That's not compassion. It's not compassion to the American worker.
What's the impact on our Social Security system and on our?
Oh, it's going to be huge.
On
and
our,
Medicaid,
social services.
Medicaid is being basically overburdened by huge numbers. The Heritage Foundation has estimated this is going to be $2.5 trillion over the next 20 years. This immigration plan. It's not compassion. What it is expedient, Joe. It's expedient for certain career politicians who want to look like they're doing something, and they're helping out people that are marching in the streets, but they're not solving the problem, because the minute they do this bill, there's going to be a whole nother wave of illegal immigrants that are kind of coming to this country to take advantage of low-wage jobs. The answer is to enforce the law against employers who are unfairly competing by employing people at lower wages. That is the answer. That has always been the answer. It is a better answer than a big border fence or a moat or alligators on the border. Enforce the law, stop the employment. They won't be here. They'll go home.
How do people find out more about your campaign?
Cox2008.com.
Thank you.
That's the website, and they'll find out this position as well as what I've done.
We thank you very much for taking the time to come in here. We wish you the very best. And we
I
hope to
enjoyed it.
see you up there with the rest of the pack on the CNN debates.
Very good.
Wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Joe.
you for Policy Watch.